Queen Zarathiel stood on the crystal balcony of her palace, watching the purple sun set over the capital city of Velcoria Prime. The twin stars painted the sky in shades of violet and gold, casting long shadows across the floating spires that housed millions of her people. She should have felt proud. Her empire stretched across 200 star systems, and her people were among the most advanced in the galaxy. Yet all she felt was tired. "Your Majesty," came a soft voice behind her. Zarathiel turned to see her chief advisor, Minister Kethlon, approaching with his usual worried expression. His pale blue skin seemed even more translucent than usual, and his large black eyes held the weight of bad news. "Let me guess," Zarathiel said, her own violet eyes flashing with annoyance. "The council wants to discuss my marriage prospects again." Kethlon's shoulders sagged. "The trade routes to the Outer Rim are being threatened by pirates. The council believes a political marriage could secure new alliances and strengthen our position." Zarathiel laughed, but there was no humor in it. A marriage. Always their solution to everything. She walked back into her chambers, her long silver hair flowing behind her like liquid starlight. "And I suppose they have already chosen my future husband?" "Actually, Your Majesty, there is an interesting proposal. A new species has recently joined the galactic community. They call themselves humans from a world called Earth. They control several systems rich in rare minerals that we need for our bioships." Humans? Zarathiel had heard the name mentioned in passing during trade meetings. Are they not the primitive ones? The species with no psychic abilities?
"That is correct, Your Majesty."
They seem to have developed space travel through pure technology, rather than bioorganic methods like most civilized species. They are unusual. Zarathiel sat down on her throne, which was grown from living crystal that responded to her emotions. Right now it glowed a dull red, reflecting her frustration. "So the council wants me to marry a primitive to secure mining rights?" "The human representative is said to be intelligent, Your Majesty. His name is Marcus Chen. He served as their chief negotiator in several trade agreements. The reports suggest he is adaptable. Zarathiel repeated the word like it tasted bitter. How wonderful. A husband who can adapt to being married to someone he has never met for the sake of mineral rights. 3 days later, Marcus Chen arrived on Velcoria Prime aboard a simple metal ship that looked crude compared to the elegant biovessels used by most species. Zarathiel watched from her private viewing chamber as the human delegation disembarked. She had expected someone larger, more impressive. Instead, she saw a man of average height with dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore simple clothes that seemed practical rather than ceremonial. He looked so ordinary, she murmured to herself. When they met formally in the throne room, Marcus surprised her. He spoke perfect Velcorian, though with a slight accent that she found oddly pleasant. He was respectful but not groveling, intelligent but not trying to show off. Most importantly, he looked directly at her when they spoke, not down at the floor like many other species did when meeting a psychic. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, bowing just the right amount. "I understand this arrangement is not ideal for either of us, but I hope we can find a way to make it work." His honesty caught her off guard. Most suitors spent their time telling her how honored they were, how beautiful she was, how much they desired the marriage. Marcus simply acknowledged the reality of their situation. "You are very direct for a diplomat," Zarathiel said. "My people value honesty, Your Majesty. It saves time and prevents misunderstandings." Over the following weeks, as the marriage preparations began, Zarathiel found herself looking forward to her conversations with Marcus. He asked thoughtful questions about Velcorian culture and history. He seemed genuinely interested in learning about her people, not just securing the trade agreement. "Your bioships are remarkable," Marcus said one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. The plants around them glowed softly in response to Zarathiel's presence.
"How do you maintain such complex living systems across interstellar distances?"
"It requires constant psychic connection," Zarathiel explained. "Every Velcorian ship has a crew member who can communicate with the bio-neural networks. It is like having a conversation with the ship itself." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "That must require incredible coordination during fleet operations." "It does. Our admirals spend years learning to maintain psychic links with dozens of ships simultaneously." She glanced at him curiously. "How do your people coordinate their fleets?" "Oh, we use basic radio communications mostly. Nothing as elegant as your methods. The wedding ceremony was held in the Grand Cathedral, a massive structure grown from a single crystal over thousands of years. Representatives from dozens of species attended, though Zarathiel noticed that many seemed more interested in the trade possibilities than the actual marriage. Marcus's family attended via hologram from Earth. His parents seemed kind, but simple people. His sister was a teacher, his brother worked in agriculture. They were so different from the noble houses and ancient bloodlines that usually surrounded royal weddings. During the ceremony, Marcus had to place his hand on the sacred crystal, which would normally allow Zarathiel to sense his emotions and intentions. When he touched it, she felt nothing. Not because he was hiding something, but because humans simply did not have psychic abilities. It was like trying to hear a song that was not being played. "Do you feel anything?" she whispered to him as they performed the ritual. "Should I?" he whispered back. Most species experience some kind of mental connection, a sharing of thoughts or emotions. Marcus smiled softly. "I cannot read your mind if that is what you mean. But I can see in your eyes that you are nervous about this. I am nervous too." After the ceremony, there was a great feast. Zarathiel watched as Marcus navigated the complex social dynamics of the gathering. He spoke with trade representatives, military officers, and noble houses with equal courtesy. Several times she heard him asking detailed questions about military tactics and defense strategies, which seemed odd for a trade negotiator. "Your husband asks very specific questions about our fleet compositions," Admiral Vextar mentioned to her during the feast. "He is probably just curious about our technology," Zarathiel replied, though she made a mental note to ask Marcus about it later. That night, in their new shared quarters, Marcus proved to be a considerate husband. He did not demand anything from her, understanding that their marriage was political rather than romantic. Instead, they talked late into the night about their respective worlds. "What is Earth like?" Zarathiel asked as they sat on the balcony looking up at the stars. "Crowded," Marcus said with a laugh. 12 billion people on one world. It makes for interesting politics. On 12 billion? How do you maintain order with so many people?" "Very carefully," Marcus said, and something in his tone made Zarathiel think there was more to that answer than he was sharing. As the weeks passed, Zarathiel found herself growing genuinely fond of Marcus. He was intelligent, kind, and surprisingly funny. He adapted quickly to Velcorian customs, and never complained about the strange food or the different gravity. But sometimes she caught him staring at star charts, with an intensity that seemed unusual for a trade representative, and his questions about military matters continued to be remarkably detailed and insightful. "You know a great deal about warfare for a diplomat," she said one evening. Marcus smiled. "All humans learn basic military history. It is part of our education system. All of them? All of them." Zarathiel filed this information away with her other growing questions about her new husband and his people. For now, though, she was content to enjoy their developing friendship and hope that perhaps this arranged marriage might become something more. She had no idea that the galaxy was about to change forever, and that the quiet, unremarkable human she had married would soon reveal himself to be something entirely different from what anyone expected. 3 months after the wedding, the first reports arrived that would change everything. Zarathiel was reviewing trade agreements in her study when Admiral Vextar burst into the room without waiting for permission. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by barely controlled panic. "Your Majesty, we have received disturbing reports from the Rim territories." Zarathiel looked up from her datapad. "What kind of reports?" 3 colonies have gone silent in the past week. When our scout ships investigated, they found..." He paused, struggling with the words. "They found nothing. The colonies were completely stripped. Every building taken apart, every resource extracted, every living thing gone." "Pirates?" Zarathiel asked, though something in Vextar's expression told her it was worse than that. "No, Your Majesty. This was systematic, professional, military." Vextar activated a holographic display showing the remains of what had once been a thriving mining colony. "Look at these images. The extraction patterns, the precision of the dismantling. This was not random destruction. Someone is harvesting entire worlds." Zarathiel stood up slowly, studying the images. "Who would do such a thing?" "Intelligence suggests it was the Hegemony, Your Majesty." The name sent a chill through Zarathiel. The Hegemony was a militant alliance of machine-augmented species from the Far Spiral. They had been expanding aggressively for decades, conquering and enslaving organic species while strip mining their worlds for resources. Most galactic powers had avoided direct conflict with them by staying out of their territory. The hegemony has never moved this far into neutral space before, Zarathiel said. That appears to have changed, Your Majesty. Our intelligence networks report massive fleet movements, hundreds of warships, construction vessels, and harvesting platforms. They are not raiding anymore. They are preparing for full-scale expansion. Zarathiel walked to her window, looking out over her capital city. Millions of her people lived their lives in peace, unaware that a threat unlike anything they had faced before was approaching their borders. Call an emergency session of the High Council, she ordered, and summon my husband. If this threat affects our trade routes, he should be informed. Marcus arrived at the council chambers looking calm and composed as always. Zarathiel had grown accustomed to his steady presence over the past months. While other advisors panicked during crises, Marcus always remained thoughtful and analytical. The council meeting was tense. Admiral Vexitar presented the intelligence reports while various ministers argued about responses. Some wanted to negotiate with the hegemony. Others suggested retreating to more defensible positions. A few even proposed surrendering the outer territories to buy time. Through it all, Marcus sat quietly listening. Zarathiel noticed that he was taking careful notes and asking very specific questions. Admiral, Marcus said during a brief pause in the debate, what can you tell me about hegemony fleet compositions? Vextar looked surprised that the human was speaking. Their standard attack formation consists of approximately 50 primary warships, supported by twice as many drone vessels and harvesting platforms. How do they coordinate such large fleets without psychic communication? Quantum entanglement networks, Vextar replied. Instantaneous communication across any distance. It gives them significant tactical advantages. Marcus nodded and made more notes. What about their defensive capabilities? Shields, armor, point defense systems? Marcus, Zarathiel said gently. These are very technical questions for a trade representative. Marcus smiled. Sorry, I find military tactics fascinating. It is a hobby of mine. But Zarathiel noticed that his questions were not those of a casual hobbyist. They were precise, professional inquiries that revealed a deep understanding of space warfare. Several times she saw Admiral Vextar looking at Marcus with surprise and growing interest. After the council meeting, Zarathiel asked Marcus to stay behind. You seem very knowledgeable about military matters, she said once they were alone. As I mentioned before, all humans receive basic military education, Marcus replied. Basic education does not usually include detailed knowledge of fleet tactics and defensive systems. Marcus was quiet for a moment. My people have a saying, know your enemy, know yourself, and you need not fear the result of 100 battles. We believe in being prepared. Prepared for what? For whatever comes. Over the following weeks, the situation deteriorated rapidly. More colonies fell to the hegemony's systematic advance. Refugee ships began arriving at Velkorian worlds, carrying terrifying stories of the mechanical soldiers and their ruthless efficiency. Zarathiel found herself spending more time with Marcus, not just as husband and wife, but as advisors trying to understand the growing threat. His insights into military strategy proved remarkably helpful, though she still could not understand how a trade representative knew so much about warfare. The hegemony's expansion pattern is interesting, Marcus said one evening as they studied star charts in their private quarters. They are not taking the most valuable systems first. They are securing supply lines and strategic positions. What does that suggest? That this is not opportunistic raiding. This is a planned campaign. They have specific objectives and they are methodically working toward them. Zarathiel felt cold. What kind of objectives? Marcus pointed to the star chart. Look at their pattern of advancement. If they continue this route, they will cut off the major trade lanes between the rim territories and the inner systems. Any species dependent on those routes will be forced to negotiate with them or face economic collapse. Including us. Including you. Zarathiel realized that the hegemony was not just expanding randomly. They were strategically positioning themselves to control the galaxy's economy. Once they controlled the trade routes, they could strangle any species that opposed them without firing a shot. We need to stop them before they complete their positioning, she said. Yes, Marcus agreed, but that will require a coordinated response from multiple species. The Velkorian Empire is powerful, but not powerful enough to face the hegemony alone. What would you recommend? Marcus was quiet for a long time, studying the charts. The key is to disrupt their supply lines before they can establish permanent positions. Hit their logistics, force them to divert resources to defend their expansion rather than continue it. That is exactly what Admiral Vextar proposed at yesterday's meeting. Admiral, Vextar is a smart officer. Zarathiel looked at her husband carefully. Marcus, how do you know so much about military strategy? I read a lot, he said, but she could tell there was more to it than that. The next day brought even worse news. A hegemony fleet had been spotted only 3 systems away from Velkorian space. They were no longer just a distant threat. They were on the doorstep. The High Council met in emergency session. Panic was setting in as ministers realized that their elegant bioships and psychic coordination might not be enough against the hegemony's technological superiority. We need allies, Zarathiel announced. Contact every major power in the galaxy. The Altarian Federation, the Zephyrian Collective, even the isolationist species. Make them understand that if the hegemony succeeds here, nowhere will be safe. What about the humans? Asked Minister Kethlon. They have been valuable trade partners. Perhaps they could contribute to the defense effort. All eyes turned to Marcus, who had been quietly observing the meeting. Zarathiel saw something flicker across his face, an expression she had never seen before. I would need to contact my government, Marcus said carefully. This would be a significant escalation beyond our current trade agreements. Of course, Zarathiel said. Any assistance your people could provide would be appreciated. That night, Zarathiel was awakened by the sound of Marcus speaking quietly in the next room. She moved closer to the door and listened, trying not to feel guilty about eavesdropping on her husband. Situation has escalated beyond our projections, Marcus was saying. The hegemony is moving faster than expected. We may need to accelerate our timeline. There was a pause, presumably as someone responded on the other end of the communication. I understand the risks, Marcus continued, but if we wait much longer, there may not be anything left to protect. The Velkorians are good people. They do not deserve what the hegemony will do to them. Another pause. Yes, I am aware of Protocol 7, but circumstances may force our hand sooner than planned. Zarathiel felt confused and slightly hurt. Protocol 7? What timeline? What was Marcus not telling her? When Marcus returned to bed, she pretended to be asleep. But her mind raced with questions about her husband and his mysterious conversations with Earth. The next morning brought the worst news yet. The hegemony had issued an ultimatum to all species in the sector. Submit to their authority or be destroyed. They gave everyone 72 hours to decide. As Zarathiel read the ultimatum, she felt her world changing around her. The peaceful galaxy she had known was ending. War was coming whether they wanted it or not. And somehow she suspected that her quiet, unremarkable husband knew more about what was coming than anyone realized. The 72 hours passed like a nightmare. Across the galaxy, some species surrendered immediately, hoping to avoid the fate of the harvested colonies. Others, like the Velkorian Empire, prepared for war. But preparation time had run out. The hegemony's first strike came at dawn on the 3rd day. Massive fleets materialized at the edge of 5 different Velkorian systems simultaneously. Their ships were enormous metal constructs bristling with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. The elegant bioships of the Velkorian Navy looked like flowers facing a storm of steel. Zarathiel stood in the command center, watching the holographic displays show the enemy fleets advancing on her worlds. Admiral Vextar was coordinating the defense, but his expression grew more grim with each report. Their technology is beyond our projections, he reported. Our psychic jammers have no effect on their quantum communication networks. Our bioships are taking heavy damage from their reality-warping weapons. Casualties? Zarathiel asked, though she dreaded the answer. 7 ships lost in the first engagement. 34 more severely damaged. The enemy has taken minimal losses. Marcus stood beside her, watching the displays with an intensity she had never seen before. His casual, diplomatic demeanor had been replaced by something else. Something focused and calculating. Admiral, Marcus said, what can you tell me about their formation patterns? Vextar glanced at Zarathiel, who nodded. They maintain strict geometric formations. Each ship has specific positioning relative to the others, very precise, very coordinated. And if that coordination was disrupted, theoretically it might cause tactical confusion. but our weapons cannot penetrate their formations to create such disruption. Marcus studied the displays for several more minutes, then said something that surprised everyone in the room. "You are attacking the wrong targets." Admiral Vextar stiffened. "I beg your pardon? You are trying to destroy their ships, but their real strength is their coordination. Attack their command and control systems. Force them to reorganize. Make them reactive instead of proactive. That is actually a sound strategy," Vextar admitted. "But we lack the precision weapons necessary to target their communications arrays without engaging their main battle lines." "What about stealth attacks? Small, fast ships that could slip past their main formations?" Vextar looked frustrated. "Our bioships are not designed for stealth operations. They emit too much psychic energy to remain hidden." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "What other allies have responded to your call for assistance?" "The Altarian Federation is sending 3 battle groups. The Zephyrian Collective has promised support ships. Several smaller species are contributing what they can." Zarathiel paused. "What about your people, Marcus? Has Earth responded to your request?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. "The situation is complicated. My government is still discussing the matter." Before Zarathiel could ask what was complicated about a request for help during an invasion, new alarms began sounding throughout the command center. "Your Majesty," a communications officer called out. "We are receiving a transmission from the Hegemony fleet. They are demanding to speak with you directly." The main display activated, showing a figure that barely looked organic anymore. The Hegemony commander was more machine than flesh, with glowing red optical sensors and a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "I am Primary Unit Designation, Conquest. You will surrender your empire immediately or face complete destruction." Zarathiel stepped forward, drawing on all her royal training to project confidence she did not feel. "I am Queen Zarathiel of the Velkorian Empire. We reject your ultimatum. Our people will not submit to slavery. Your resistance is illogical. Our forces outnumber yours 3-1. Our technology is superior in every category. Surrender now and your population will be allowed to live as workers. Continue resistance and they will be processed for biological materials. We would rather die free than live as slaves." The mechanical head tilted slightly. "Death can be arranged. You have 1 planetary rotation to reconsider. After that, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. "Your Majesty," Admiral Vextar said quietly, "our latest projections show that we cannot hold against a full assault. If they commit their entire force, our defenses will fall within days." Zarathiel felt the weight of millions of lives pressing down on her. "What about our allies? When will their reinforcements arrive?" "The earliest estimates are 1 week. We need to hold for at least that long." "Can we?" Vextar hesitated. "It is unlikely." Marcus had been silent during this exchange, but now he stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I need to make an urgent communication to my government. The situation has changed dramatically. Of course. Use the secure channel in my private office." As Marcus left the command center, Zarathiel noticed that his walk was different. Gone was the casual gait of a diplomat. His movements were precise, purposeful, military. An hour later, Marcus returned with an expression she had never seen before. He looked like a different person entirely. "Your Majesty, I have been in contact with Earth High Command. Humanity has decided to intervene in this conflict." Zarathiel felt a surge of hope. "How many ships can your people contribute?" "That depends. First, I need to ask you something important. How much do you trust me?" The question caught her off guard. What do you mean?" "I mean that I have not been entirely honest about my background. About my people. About why I am really here." Marcus looked directly into her eyes. "The next few hours are going to reveal things about humanity that will change how the galaxy sees us forever. I need to know that you trust me because once this begins, there will be no going back." Zarathiel studied her husband's face. The easy smile was gone, replaced by something harder, more serious. But his eyes were still kind, still honest. "I trust you," she said. Marcus nodded. "Then you should know that my real name is Admiral Marcus Chen, and I command Battle Group 7 of the Terran Defense Fleet." The command center went completely silent. "You are a military officer?" Zarathiel whispered. I am the military officer responsible for Earth's intelligence operations in this sector of the galaxy. Admiral Vextar stepped forward, his expression a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Intelligence operations? Your people told us you were a trade representative. That was my cover identity. For the past 2 years, human agents have been positioned throughout the galaxy, gathering information and establishing relationships with other species. The trade agreements were real, but they were also convenient ways to place our people in strategic positions. Zarathiel felt like the ground was shifting beneath her feet. You have been spying on us? We have been preparing for this, Marcus said, gesturing toward the displays showing the hegemony fleets. Our long-range sensors detected hegemony expansion patterns years ago. We knew this war was coming. We needed to understand the galactic powers, their capabilities, their weaknesses, their potential as allies. So our marriage... Zarathiel started, then stopped, not sure she wanted to know the answer. Was arranged by your council for political reasons, just as we said. But I volunteered for the assignment because our analysts identified the Velkorian Empire as the most likely species to successfully resist hegemony expansion. Marcus paused. The personal feelings that developed were not part of the mission. Before anyone could respond, new alarms began sounding. The communications officer looked up with panic in his eyes. Your Majesty, the hegemony fleet is accelerating their timetable. They are beginning their final approach. All ships, all targets. This is not a probe. This is the full invasion. Marcus immediately moved to a communication station. This is Admiral Chen, authorization code Omega-77 Alpha. Execute Protocol 7 immediately. All assets full deployment. The war starts now. Zarathiel watched her husband who was apparently an admiral, issue orders with the confidence of someone who had done this many times before. What is Protocol 7? She asked. Marcus looked at her with something that might have been an apology in his eyes. It is the order to stop pretending that humanity is harmless. On the displays, the hegemony fleets were approaching Velkorian space in overwhelming numbers. Their mechanical ships blotted out the stars, and their reality-warping weapons were already beginning to tear holes in the fabric of space itself. But for the first time since the crisis began, Marcus looked confident. Admiral Vextar, he said, I recommend you pull your ships back to defensive positions around the populated worlds. Let the hegemony come to us. Admiral Chen, Vextar said, testing the title. With respect, falling back will only delay the inevitable. We need to meet them in open space or they will destroy our planets. Marcus smiled, and for a moment Zarathiel saw something in that smile that made her shiver. Trust me, Admiral, in about 6 hours, you are going to see why the hegemony made a very serious mistake when they threatened Earth. The hegemony's response to humanity's ultimatum was swift and brutal. Primary unit designation. Conquest decided to make an example of the species that dared to threaten them. A full battle group of 50 warships changed course toward Earth, intent on destroying humanity's homeworld before returning to finish the Velkorians. They are treating your ultimatum as a joke, Admiral Vextar reported, watching the tactical displays. The force heading toward Earth is massive. Your people need to evacuate immediately. Marcus stood calmly at the communication station, monitoring reports from across the galaxy. Evacuation will not be necessary. Zarathiel felt her heart sink. She had grown to care deeply for Marcus over the past months, and the thought of his homeworld being destroyed was devastating. Marcus, please, at least save your family. Get them away from Earth before the hegemony arrives. My family is safer on Earth than anywhere else in the galaxy, Marcus replied without looking away from his displays. How can you say that? The hegemony fleet will reach Earth in less than 4 hours. Marcus finally turned to look at her, and his expression was completely calm. Zarathiel, do you remember what I told you about my family during our wedding? She thought back to the holographic ceremony. Your sister is a teacher. Your brother works in agriculture. My sister teaches combat tactics at the Solar Military Academy. My brother coordinates food supplies for the Terran Defense Fleet. My father is a retired general. My mother designs weapon systems. Marcus smiled. Everyone on Earth has a role in our defense. Everyone. Before Zarathiel could ask what he meant, the first reports began coming in from the edge of the solar system. The hegemony fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, expecting to find a primitive world defended by a few scattered ships. Instead, they found themselves in the middle of the most heavily fortified system in the galaxy. The first surprise was the asteroid belt. What the hegemony had assumed were natural space rocks were actually massive weapons platforms, each one bristling with enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. The platforms activated simultaneously, creating a wall of energy that lit up space for millions of kilometers. The second surprise was the planets themselves. Mercury was not a barren rock, but a fortress world covered in orbital defense cannons. Venus hid massive shipyards behind its thick atmosphere. Mars was surrounded by so many defense satellites that they looked like a second set of rings. But the biggest surprise was Earth itself. Impossible, Admiral Vextar whispered as he watched the tactical feeds. There are thousands of ships around that world. Where did they come from? They were always there, Marcus explained. Every merchant vessel that left Earth for the past 20 years was a disguised warship. Every space station was a weapons platform. Every asteroid mining operation was a forward base. The hegemony's 50 ships found themselves facing more than 3,000 human vessels, supported by orbital platforms that could crack planets, and defensive systems that turned space itself into a weapon. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. The human ships moved with precision that seemed impossible. They did not rely on psychic coordination like the Velcorians or quantum networks like the hegemony. Instead, they fought with a ruthless efficiency that spoke of centuries of practice. How are they coordinating so perfectly? Zarathiel asked, watching the human ships work together like parts of a single organism. Practice, Marcus said simply. We have been fighting wars for our entire history. We know how to kill efficiently. The hegemony ships tried to use their reality-warping weapons, but the humans had developed countermeasures. They tried to jam communications, but human ships operated independently when needed. They tried to retreat, but the humans had positioned forces to cut off every escape route. Of the 50 hegemony ships that attacked Earth, only 3 survived to flee back to their main fleet. They carried with them sensor recordings that would change how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity. The recordings showed weapons that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, shield systems that could deflect reality-warping attacks, ships that moved with impossible precision and attacked with calculated brutality. But most disturbing of all, they showed that humanity had been hiding their true capabilities for decades. They have been pretending to be weak. Primary Unit Designation Conquest reported to the Hegemony High Command. Every interaction with other species was designed to make us underestimate them. They are not primitives. They are predators. Back in Velcorian space, the news of Earth's victory spread through the Allied fleets like wildfire. Species that had never heard of humans before were suddenly asking urgent questions about this new power that had just humiliated the hegemony. Admiral Chen, Admiral Vextar said, using Marcus's real title with obvious respect, "How many ships does Earth actually have?" "Enough," Marcus replied. "The battle group that defeated the hegemony attack represents about 5% of our total fleet strength." Zarathiel felt dizzy. 5%? "We have been preparing for this war for a very long time, Your Majesty. Earth is not the only human world. We have colonies throughout this sector of the galaxy, all of them heavily defended. What you saw today was just one system's defensive force. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not a minor species that had recently achieved space travel. They were a major galactic power that had been pretending to be harmless while building the largest military force anyone had ever seen." "Why?" Zarathiel asked. "Why hide your strength?" "Because open displays of military power make everyone nervous," Marcus explained. "If we had arrived in the galaxy with massive fleets and advanced weapons, every species would have seen us as a threat. Instead, we appeared as harmless traders and miners. Species welcomed us, shared information with us, allowed us to establish bases and relationships. When the real threat appeared, we were already in position to help." Admiral Vexitar was studying the tactical displays with growing amazement. "The positioning of your hidden bases, the timing of your trade agreements, the placement of your agents, this was all planned." For over 50 years, Marcus confirmed. We identified the hegemony as a galaxy-wide threat before most species even knew they existed. Everything we have done since then has been preparation for this war. The communication systems began broadcasting reports from across the galaxy. Human fleets were emerging from hidden bases and revealing themselves throughout hegemony-threatened space. Ships that had been disguised as cargo vessels were dropping their camouflage and exposing weapon systems that dwarfed anything most species had ever seen. How many of you are there? Zarathiel asked weakly. About 40 billion people spread across 600 worlds, Marcus said. And yes, all of them know how to fight. It is part of our basic education, remember? The scope of humanity's deception was becoming clear. They had not just hidden their military capabilities. They had hidden their entire civilization. What other species thought was humanity's only colony world was actually a small outpost. What they thought were mining stations were actually military bases. What they thought were simple trade ships were actually scouts and intelligence-gathering platforms. You have been watching us, Zarathiel said. All of us, learning our strengths, our weaknesses, our secrets. We needed to understand the galaxy before we could protect it, Marcus said. The hegemony has conquered and enslaved dozens of species. We studied their methods, their tactics, their technology. We also studied the species they were likely to target next, including us, especially you. The Velkorian Empire was always going to be the hegemony's primary target in this sector. Your biotechnology, your psychic abilities, your strategic position. You represented everything they wanted to capture and control. Zarathiel realized that her marriage to Marcus had never been the simple political alliance she thought it was. It had been part of humanity's preparation for this war. So, when you married me, I was already Admiral Chen. The marriage gave me access to Velkorian military planning and allowed me to position human assets to help defend your empire. Marcus paused. But my feelings for you are real, Zarathiel. That was never part of the mission. Before she could respond, new alerts began sounding throughout the command center. Multiple human fleets are arriving throughout the system, the communications officer announced. Fleet designations: Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, and Epsilon. Over 200 ships total. On the displays, sleek human warships began materializing around Velkorian worlds. They moved with the same precise coordination they had shown at Earth, taking defensive positions with military efficiency that impressed even Admiral Vexstar. Admiral Chen, came a voice over the communication system. This is Admiral Sarah Rodriguez aboard the TNS Relentless. Battle Group Alpha is in position and ready for orders. Marcus activated his response. Admiral Rodriguez, establish defensive perimeter around Velkoria Prime. Coordinate with Admiral Vexstar of the Velkorian Navy. Rules of engagement are free fire on any hegemony forces. Understood, Admiral. Good to have you back in command. Zarathiel looked at her husband with new eyes. The quiet, diplomatic man she had married was actually one of humanity's senior military commanders, and his people were revealing themselves as the most powerful species in the galaxy. Marcus, she said quietly, what happens now? Marcus studied the tactical. The final battle began at dawn on the 7th day of the war. The hegemony had assembled the largest fleet in their history, over 1,500 warships supported by twice as many drone vessels and harvesting platforms. They were confident that even these mysterious humans could not stand against such overwhelming numbers. They were wrong. Marcus stood in the command center of the TNS Relentless, Admiral Rodriguez's flagship, with Zarathiel beside him. The past week had transformed their relationship from a political marriage into something deeper. She had seen him coordinate humanity's response to the hegemony threat with brilliant tactical precision, and he had shared the burden of command during the darkest hours when defeat seemed certain. All human fleets report ready, Admiral Rodriguez announced. Battle groups Alpha through Zulu are in position. Total force strength 843 vessels. The numbers seemed impossible. The humans were still outnumbered almost 2-1, but their ships were larger, more advanced and crewed by people who had been preparing for this fight their entire lives. What about our allies? Marcus asked. Velkorian forces are coordinating with battle groups Alpha and Beta. The Altarian Federation is providing support to Gamma and Delta groups. Other allied species are maintaining defensive positions around population centers. Marcus nodded. The allies were brave, but their technology was not designed for the kind of warfare the hegemony practiced. The humans would carry the main burden of this battle. Admiral Chen, came a transmission from the lead hegemony vessel. This is primary unit designation, Conquest. You have impressed us with your deception, but mathematics cannot be denied. Surrender now and your species will be allowed to serve as administrators in our new order. Marcus activated the response channel. Primary unit designation Conquest. This is Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have threatened innocent civilizations, enslaved entire species, and tried to conquer worlds that are under our protection. We reject your offer. Then you choose extinction. We choose victory. Battle began with the hegemony's signature move, HFY, coordinated assault by their reality-warping weapons designed to tear holes in space itself around the human fleets. It was a tactic that had destroyed dozens of species before, turning their ships inside out and leaving their crews dead in the vacuum. But the human ships did not disappear into twisted space. Instead, they activated defensive systems that the hegemony had never seen before. Quantum stabilizers online, reported the tactical officer. Reality anchors maintaining normal space geometry. Zarathiel watched in amazement as the space around the human fleet remained stable, despite the hegemony's attacks. How is that possible? We have been studying hegemony technology for 50 years, Marcus explained. We knew exactly how their reality-warping weapons worked and developed specific countermeasures. They cannot use their primary advantage against us. The hegemony fleet seemed to pause as their main weapon proved useless, but they quickly adapted, switching to conventional energy weapons and kinetic bombardment. Thousands of projectiles and energy beams filled the space between the fleets. The human response was devastating. Instead of engaging in a traditional fleet battle, the human ships split into smaller groups and began executing coordinated attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. They used the gravity wells of nearby planets to slingshot around the hegemony formations, attacking from unexpected angles with weapons that struck faster than their enemies could respond. How are they moving so fast? Admiral Vextar asked from his position on the Velkorian flagship. Gravitational manipulation, Marcus replied. We learned to use gravity as a weapon and a tool. We can accelerate our ships to incredible speeds and change direction instantly. The battle turned into a demonstration of tactical superiority. While the hegemony relied on overwhelming firepower and technological advantages, the humans fought with precision, coordination, and an understanding of warfare that came from thousands of years of practice. Target their command ships, Marcus ordered. Cut off their coordination and force them to fight as individuals instead of a fleet. Human strike groups began focusing their attacks on specific hegemony vessels, the ones broadcasting command signals and coordinating the enemy response. Without their central coordination, the hegemony fleet began to fragment into smaller groups that could be defeated separately. Admiral, the tactical officer reported, enemy fleet cohesion is breaking down. They are falling back to individual ship operations. Excellent. Begin Phase 2. Zarathiel was about to ask what Phase 2 was when space around the hegemony fleet began to change. The stars themselves seemed to shift and bend as massive human ships materialized from seemingly empty space. Dreadnoughts, Marcus said simply. We kept our largest ships hidden until now. The human dreadnoughts were enormous, each one larger than an entire hegemony battle group. Their weapon systems lit up space with energy that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. But more importantly, they carried technology that the hegemony could not understand. What are those devices? Zarathiel asked, pointing to strange arrays on the dreadnought hulls. Gravity weapons, Marcus replied. We learned to weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe. The gravity weapons activated, and hegemony ships began to crumple as their own mass was turned against them. Others were flung away from the battle at impossible speeds, their crews helpless as their vessels spun out of control. The hegemony fleet began to retreat. They are trying to escape to faster-than-light speed. Admiral Rodriguez reported, not today, Marcus said. Activate the interdiction fields. Space around the entire battle area suddenly became impassable to faster-than-light travel. The retreating hegemony ships found themselves trapped, unable to escape as human forces closed in from all directions. This is impossible, came a transmission from primary unit designation. Conquest. No species has this level of technological development. You are primitives. We are survivors, Marcus replied, and we have been preparing for this fight longer than you have existed. The final phase of the battle was not so much a fight as a systematic destruction of the hegemony fleet. Human ships moved through the enemy formations with clinical precision, disabling vessels and capturing survivors for interrogation. The few hegemony ships that managed to escape carried word back to their home territories. Humanity was not to be challenged. In the aftermath, as rescue ships collected survivors and damage reports came in, the full scope of humanity's victory became clear. The largest hegemony fleet ever assembled had been completely destroyed with minimal human losses. Admiral Chen, Admiral Vextar, said over the communication system, "I have never seen anything like this. Your people fight like nothing we have ever encountered." "We fight like humans," Marcus replied. "We adapt, we survive, and we protect what matters to us." In the days that followed, the galactic community struggled to understand what they had witnessed. Humanity was not the minor species they had believed. They were the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen, and they had been hiding among the other species for decades. Trade agreements were hastily renegotiated. Diplomatic relationships were re-established with much more respect. Several aggressive species quietly abandoned their expansion plans, unwilling to risk drawing human attention. "What happens now?" Sarathiel asked Marcus as they stood together on the observation deck of the Relentless, looking out at the debris field that had once been the hegemony's fleet. "Now we rebuild," Marcus said. "The hegemony still controls territory in other parts of the galaxy. This was just one battle in a longer war, but the galaxy knows now that they do not have to face the hegemony alone. And us? What happens to our marriage now that the deception is over?" Marcus turned to look at her, and she saw the same kind, honest man she had fallen in love with, despite everything that had been revealed. "That depends. Can you forgive me for not telling you the truth about who I really was?" Sarathiel thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the deception, the strategic manipulation of their relationship. But she also thought about the man who had risked everything to protect her people, who had shown her what real strength looked like, and who had never once made her feel like anything less than an equal partner. "I can forgive you," she said, "but I have one condition." "What is that?" "No more secrets between us. I want to know everything about humanity, about your real capabilities, about your plans for the galaxy." Marcus smiled. "That might take a while. We have been very busy for the past century. We have time." A month later, their second wedding ceremony was held on Velcoria Prime. This time, it was not a political alliance between a queen and a trade representative. It was a celebration of love between equals, representing two of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The guest list included representatives from hundreds of species, many of whom were still adjusting to the new reality of human power. But there was something else in the air: hope. For the first time in decades, the galaxy felt safe from the hegemony threat. As Marcus and Sarathiel exchanged vows again, this time with complete honesty between them, Admiral Rodriguez leaned over to Admiral Vextar. "You know,